Okay, so we're going to talk about angles on parallel lines. I'm going from that Desmos activity. We didn't do the Desmos activity. There are certain things that you should have kind of seen. So I made these two diagrams because you need to remember one specific thing. So what's the difference between diagram A and B? Well, in B, the lines aren't parallel. Okay. What angles were congruent in A? We saw things like the corresponding. Okay, and we practice that again. So we're talking about angles 1 and angle 5. Okay, so 1 and 5. Um, angle 2 and angle 6. Angle 4 and angle 7. Angle 3 and angle 8. Okay, we also saw that the alternate interior angles were congruent. So angle 4 was congruent to angle 6. So 4 was congruent to 6. Okay, so 3 and 8. So angle 4 and angle 6. So here and here. And then, of course, angle 3 and angle 5. And then also the alternate exterior angles were congruent. So we had things like angle 1 and angle 8. And the other thing it was angle 2 and angle 7. Okay, so angle 2 and angle 7. So for these, so I'm looking at diagram B, were the corresponding angles congruent? So if I look at this right here, is this angle the same size as this angle? And this one's a little bit smaller, so maybe it's not as marked that it's that different, but this angle here is larger than this angle here. So no, because the lines aren't parallel, the angles aren't congruent. Okay, and I'm going to use the congruent symbol. So no, because lines are not parallel, the angles are not congruent. So other things that you notice for this is that the vertical angles were. Angle 1 was congruent to angle 3, angle 4 was congruent to angle 2. Even in the regular diagram, angle 10 and angle 2 were congruent. So all the vertical angles. So don't worry about what they were not congruent. We'll talk about that in a little bit. So conclusions here. So vertical angles are congruent. Always doesn't have to have parallel lines. That's the word congruent. So again, if I have this diagram here, I know that angle is going to be congruent to that angle. Okay, and this angle and this angle are congruent. And there's a whole reason for that. This angle and this angle are supplementary. They're a linear pair. So I know these two add to 180. I also know these two add to 180. So this angle must be congruent to this angle, because if you subtract this angle, or if you add this angle to either of these, you get 180. Just as a brief explanation. So corresponding angles postulate, corresponding angles on parallel lines are congruent. So you just need to remember your corresponding angles. So just knowing the names is important. So we're talking about this, this one and this one, this one and this one, this one and this one, and last but not least, these guys right here. So alternate interior angles on parallel lines are congruent. So alternate interior, my sparkle pen. So we're going to say this and this, so these two angles, and let's go with this angle here and this angle here. And then alternate exterior angles on parallel lines. The lines have to be parallel. I showed you that from the original diagram, are also congruent. Okay, and so just to remind you, and I didn't do this, okay, this is how you know they're parallel even if you draw it badly. That this angle and this angle are congruent, and this angle and this angle are congruent. Okay, so we use that fact. I like to have a lot of color. I'm having too much fun with this rainbow stuff. So it says right here, the measure of angle 9 is 80 degrees. Okay, knowing that, I know 9 is congruent to 11 because they're vertical. Okay, I know that because these two lines are parallel, that 9 is congruent to 1 because they're corresponding. I know that 9 is congruent to 3 because I know those lines are parallel. The alternate interior angles are congruent. And so I know angles 1, comma, angle 3, angle 11 are all the measures of each, sorry, I should probably write measures of, is equal to 90 degrees. How do I know? Well, angle 1 was corresponding, angle 3, alternate interior, and angle 11 was vertical. So you could write all that. Or sorry, I said 90, it should be 80 degrees, excuse me. The other thing that I know is 9 and 10 are a linear pair. Linear pairs add to 180. So I know, and I know 180 minus 80 is 100 degrees. So I know that the measure of angle 10 is equal to 100 degrees. Well, I also know then 12 has to be 100 because those are vertical angles. I know angle 2, the measure of angle 2 has to be 100 degrees. So 100 degrees here. Because they're corresponding, I know that the measure of angle 4 is equal to 100 degrees because they're alternate exterior. Okay, so again, I don't answer each individual part, I just kind of go through and put in what I know. Okay, so the other piece of information is measure of angle 5 is 68 degrees. So angle 5 is 68 degrees. So the measure of angle 5 equals 68. So I know the measure of angle 7 also has to be 68 degrees. I know the measure of angle 13 equals 68 degrees because those are corresponding. I know the measure of angle 15 is 68 degrees because those are vertical. Excuse me, I have a frog in my throat today. And so knowing that, the measure of angle 8 is going to be 180 minus 68, which is 112 degrees. So I'm just going to highlight in blue all of the angles that are 12. So I know the measure of angle 8, the measure of angle 6, the measure of angle 14, and the measure of angle 15 are all going to be 112 degrees because of all of those relationships. Okay, so your next observation is look at the consecutive interior angle. So I'm talking about the measure of, let's say, angle 2 and the measure of angle 9 on the first one. The measure of angle 2 was 100 degrees. The measure of angle 9 was 80. Okay, and then also I'll look at another pair of consecutive interiors. So let's say the measure of angle 6 and the measure of angle 13. Well, the measure of angle 6 was 112 degrees and the measure of angle 13 was 68 degrees. And the thing that I notice is that they both add to be 180 degrees. So therefore, consecutive interior parallel angles on parallel lines are supplementary. And this one is an easy one to forget. That's an easy one to forget. So it says, let's say this is 1, 2, 3, 4. I know that the measure, if these are parallel, only if they're parallel, the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180. And I know the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 4 is equal to 180 degrees. So I'm just going to go through. I'm just going to do these practice problems here. This is find the measure of angle 3 in the diagram below. The measure of angle 2 is 4x minus 26, and the measure of angle 3 is 3x plus 4. And basically, you're going to just be trying to figure out what relationship that they have. So for these, those are vertical angles. I know vertical angles are congruent. It doesn't have to be parallel lines or anything. So I know 4x minus 26 is equal to 3x plus 4. Okay, so I solve this. X minus 26 is equal to 4. Add 26, add 26. X is equal to 30. I know the measure of angle 3 is, so the measure of angle 3 is going to be 3 times 30 plus 4. So the measure of angle 3 is equal to 64 degrees. Don't forget the degree symbol. That's what I'm looking for in your answer, so you don't have to put measure of, unless I was asking you a whole bunch of different angles. If I put 30 in here, 4 times 30 is 100, or 4 times, 3 times 30 is 90. Excuse me, guys. That's 90. 90 plus 4, this is going to be 94. Of course, that's actually a good thing to catch. I meant to do that. No, I didn't mean to do that. It's actually a good thing to catch, though. The only reason why I caught that mistake is because I know if I plug it into this problem, I should get the same thing because vertical angles are congruent. So 4 times 30 is 120. 120 minus 26 is going to be 194. Okay, or 94, just 94. Okay, so some of these diagrams get really confusing. I'm looking at this, all of the lines in this diagram are parallel versus only 2 are parallel, and so that's why I have 2 different sets. If I know all of the lines are parallel, I can, I'm actually just going to color code all the angles that are congruent. So I know this one and this one are congruent, vertical, corresponding, alternate interior, vertical here and here, if you want to color code everything. Okay, and then I do the same thing for the other pair of angles. So I go through and say, okay, I know this one and this one are the same. Those are alternate interior, vertical, alternate interior. You could do alternate exterior if you want, this one and this one. So all the angles that are the same color have the same measure. Okay, so looking at this right here, I start writing what I know. Well, if this is 4z plus 6, then this one right here has to be 4z plus 6, and these are both the same, so 4z plus 6 must be equal to 106 minus 6 minus 6. 4z is equal to 100. Z is equal to 25 when you divide. Okay. So I use the other things that I know. I know that this is a linear pair, so I know 2y plus 106 is equal to 180, because I know the sum of linear pairs, the measures of a linear pair is 180. Subtract 106, subtract 106, this should be subtract. 2y is equal to 180, or 180, 74. Divide by 2, that's going to be 37. Okay, so y is equal to 37, which when I plug it in, 2 times 37 is 74. 106 minus 74 is going to be, or plus 104. The last thing is this x. Well, I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it, but I also know that these are consecutive interior, and they also add to 180. So x plus 106 is equal to 180 minus 106 minus 106. X is equal to 74. So those are our 3 angle measures. Okay, let's pick a different color. These ones, it's one of those things that you completely forget. I don't have corresponding, I don't have vertical. If I extended my lines here, and maybe this will help with your visual, what I have is I have consecutive interiors. So what do I know about these two angles? They add to be 180. So I know 5y plus 5 plus 13y minus 5 is equal to 180. And so I can go through and solve that way. That's going to be 18y is equal to 180, divide by 18, divide by 18, y is equal to 10. Okay, same thing with the other one. 11x plus 4 plus 5x is equal to 180. That's going to be 16x plus 4 is equal to 180. 16x equals 176. I dropped my x there. Don't drop your x. And that's going to be 11, I believe. So x is equal to 11. All right. Last couple of problems is find the measure of angle 1. This one's actually, you have to do what's called, you have to draw an auxiliary line, because these angles don't have a relationship. They're not on the same transversal. But if I draw another parallel line, okay, and this is called an auxiliary line, that can actually help me with my problem. So when I draw my auxiliary line, it's parallel to my other two lines. So if it's parallel, then I know if this angle is 110, then this angle right here also has to be 110, which means that this angle right here, the angle next to it, has to be 70 because they add to 180. Okay, so remember that you're trying to find this inside angle in between the lines here. And so I know part of it is 70. I also know that this angle is 38. So the angle right here is 38 because they're also alternate interior. And so I know 78 plus 38 is going to be 106, oof, that's not good, 116 degrees. And there you go. This one's similar. You do the same thing. This is 18, so this is 18, this is 82, so this one right here would be 82. This one's a little bit simpler. And so 18 plus 82 is going to be 100 degrees. So there you go.